John Carter was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. He enlisted in the U.S. Army on a ranger contract and ended up serving as senior scout on a 6-man reconnaissance team in the Long Range Surveillance Detachment 101st Airborne Division, providing vital services for the Rockefellers in Desert Storm, including securing their oil assets and serving as a medical guinea pig through being forced to take unknown pills and wearing arm monitors on missions, not to mention the 16 shots he had to take in 5 minutes before heading to the sandbox. So he has some interesting takes on everything. But he met and ended up marrying a Brazilian woman, courted by his father-in-law to move to Brazil to manage a truly off-grid family ranch in the Amazon frontier. In 2011, the Botanical Research Institute of Texas awarded John their prestigious International Award of Excellence in Conservation. Now, he's told his ITM consultant that he has listened to me speak about Brazil and the ongoing brawl for control between good versus evil. Brazilians have experienced horrific inflation before. To that extent, their habits were permanently forged culturally in response. Even to this day, 30 years later, now they're getting sucked into the carbon finance trap with their lands as collateral. Additionally, John has written that in 1996, my wife and I moved to the southern Brazilian Amazon to live on a 21,500 acre cattle ranch in the Mato Grosso frontier, located 18 hours from the nearest hospital by truck on horrific roads and trails, which I know a lot about. We lived off the grid with power provided by a diesel generator for 4 hours a day and water from a spring pumped uphill by a water wheel to our headquarters. We raised our own beef and chicken and maintained a massive garden to feed 15 people who lived there year-round. Most rewarding of all was learning about the medicinal plants the surrounding forest provided in abundance. The local cowboys and pioneers knew a lot, but it was not until we met the Indians in the Xingu region that we really understood the brilliance of their diet and natural pharmacy. Now, today, he's a cattle rancher and conservationist who started the Brazilian Rainforest Conservation Organization, Aliança de Terra, that now manages over 14 million acres of Amazon land, as well as their ranches in Texas, Mato Grosso, and Panara. I'm probably butchering those, I'm sorry. Parana, and he says, don't fear, fight with truth, which is exactly what we do here on the Coffee with Lynette channel. He's been on The Late Show with David Letterman, and he did a TED Talk in 2011 on conservation, just to mention a few views of his work. But what really struck me was when he said that he'd like to talk about how a small idea could turn into a revolution, which is frankly what we all need right now. This is just a little of his background, and I'm so honored that he's joined us today. We're just gonna kind of dive in, but I'm so excited to talk to you today. I really am. It's oh wow.
It's an honor to be here. You're one of my heroes. I really respect you for what you do and what you say and your bravery and everything that you say is well, thank God someone's saying it.
Wow. Well, I'm going to say I am so honored to have you. And I always like to ask this one question, and that is, why are you doing everything that you're doing? What motivates you?
Well, I think it's focused rage and a lot of anger at having, through good faith, worked to try to bring solutions in Brazil, specifically in the Amazon, to a massive problem, which is really anarchy on the frontier, on the Wild West frontier. And so my idea was to create a landowner-based movement of land stewardship, God-focused. And I got tied up because of my own fault with the opposite side of the coin, with creation-focused Darwinians that are from a handful of institutions and academic universities that turned out to be all funded by the Rockefellers, back in the 60s, and to launch this entire global UN Sustainable Development Agenda 21 carbon trap. So this new Great Reset being a totally new economic system based on natural resources and energy. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where when I started to, through good faith, to work with some of these people from, it seemed at the time, from various organizations. I didn't realize they had all been created by our State Department,
right?
Funded through USAID, as well as created the brainchild being World Wildlife Fund, which in itself was created by Prince Philip and Prince Bernhard in the Rockefellers. So when I started to figure that out, I then said, well, I'm in the race already. We've created something that's doing a lot of good. And now the task is, who is going to run it, me or them? And are they going to hijack us like they hijack Greenpeace and everything else, or are we going to be able to survive? So that's what motivates me. It's the fight, really. It's not to give up, and it's to do right, because they can't stand results. They can't stand people doing the right thing, because it exposes the fraud that they're leading.
Yeah, which is the entire financial system is just one big fraud. That's, definitely. Yeah. But I'd like to, your wife is Brazilian, and you moved to Brazil in the mid-90s. So can we talk a little bit about the hyperinflation that they experienced then, what's going on there now, and how that's impacted people? Sure.
So by the time I moved there, they had been through this massive stress. But I mean, a quick history: Brazil was a military regime up until 1985, but during the military control, they call it the economic miracle, the milagre econômico. But that increased public debt massively, and so what happened is it created runaway inflation, government crackdown, massive violence, chaos, really, and so that's what perpetrated this handover of power back to supposedly free, democratizing Brazil. Mm-hmm. That was in 1985, and then. But the big deal was the Collor plan. Was President Collor, who was March 1990, I believe, and he was elected under the "Let's make America great again, let's make Brazil great again" campaign. It's the exact same thing.
Right.
And once he got in, I don't know. It was soon after he was elected and took power that they had a bank holiday for 3 days, and over that 3-day period. Right up till that time, December 28th, 1989, inflation in Brazil was 1,764%. So, yeah, and then
it's kind of hard for people to wrap their brain around that level of inflation. Do you know what that looks like? Maybe you can help us wrap our brains around it.
Well, I can tell you how you react after you've been scalded, and it affected Brazilian psyche up until this day. Mm-hmm. So the Collor plan froze all bank accounts, checking accounts, savings accounts for 18 months. And so it wasn't a buy-in where they gave you shares in a bank. They just took your money and locked it up. And then after 18 months, you didn't get your money back. You had to go to court to get it back. So it was theft. Mm-hmm. And they passed a tax called EOF, which was and it was in existence when I got there, that taxed every deposit into your account. So if you deposit $10 in your account, or your mom gives you money for Christmas, you deposit in the account, all that's taxed, even though it's been taxed before. So it taxed all deposits. They brought in a new currency. They privatized state-owned assets, which meant that, the JP Morgans and the Merrill Lynch's got everything. They picked up everything, right. Mining companies, what have you. They opened up markets for foreign investment. which is great when the exchange rate is, massively favors the dollar. You go in there and pick up everything for pennies on the dollar. So that led to the collapse of the middle class entrepreneur. Virtually everything he promised to do to help the country, he did the opposite and didn't stop inflation.
Right.
So by the time I got there, they had a new president. They had a new economic plan called the Real Plan. And but still to this day, you don't keep money in the bank. If you get a payment for revenue or something, you already have a plan before it hits the bank to get it out of the bank. You sell cattle, well, you have land, you have something earmarked where you're going to take that capital and stick it somewhere to get it out of the hands of the bank. Because in the bank, thanks to the World Wildlife Fund and the environmental movement, installed all these environmental laws, which they can fine you. You're guilty before proven innocent. They can lock your bank account, and then you have to prove that you're innocent because they say you tore down some tree. So it's been weaponized. But what that really did is all that pressure. You start to put pressure on people, they're going to find a way around it, and that created a black market. And that black market includes a bartering system. If you want, in a money laundering system that everyone in the country uses, including the justice people, the judges, the prosecutors, they all do it. It's a big cartoon like the sheep and the sheepdog. During the day, you're enemies, and at night, everyone cheats. And that's Brazil. That's what happened to the country. So they maintain two sets of books. The books you're going to show the Brazilian Receita Federal, their IRS, and then you keep your other set of books with you're called Caixa Dois, your second account that you run all your operations in. So cash transactions, no receipts, no invoices, bartering. When you sell an asset, there's no financing to buy a house or land or what property, whatever. So you will sell something and expect to be paid a third cash, a third in assets, a third in cars or gold or whatever. It's that way to this day. Then you have to buy dollar. If you want to send money offshore to get it out of Brazil, you have to go through the central bank, which is tyranny. You have to fill out thousands of pages of forms and promise them where it came from, and then they know everything about you, and they got you in the system. And so to get around it, what Brazilians do is they set up called a doleiro, or a dollar man, that you will say, hey, I want to ship this money to the United States, and they'll take your money, and then they'll find someone in the States then to give you dollars. And so it's all based on trust. Wow. And that's very common, to the extent that that's what started the car wash scandal, however many years ago. So that's at the other simultaneously, Lynette, Brazil was used as a guinea pig. And so you look at globalism, they chose certain countries for certain aspects of their global plan. The social credit score in China, Costa Rica for the environmental, and then Brazil for the banking system. So they have an extremely sophisticated banking system that was decades ahead of the U.S. In the 90s, we were paying bills online through an online banking system, for instance.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So they were testing the system.
They tested the system, yeah. And so now having a boot on each side of the fence between the U.S. and there, obviously what's going to happen here is through the whatever new currency and the digital platform that we're going to be stuck into, our financial system will be into it too, and then they're going to lock it up whenever they want to.
Well, that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because if so much is done outside of the system, a third cash, a third assets, and a third gold, or something like that, how in the world will people be able to function if there is no cash?
That's going to be a game changer, and I don't think that they see that coming. You
mean the people?
I mean the people that are currently using that system, which is about everybody.
Right.
When they take cash away, it's going to. It will collapse the economy, for sure, because you won't be able to. No one wants to get into the system, so all that black market transactions will take a big break. will stop it until people try to figure out an alternative, because there's only so many bells and whistles that you can put together to barter with if you don't have gold and silver. And they don't have the options in Brazil with gold and silver like we do here. Although in the Amazon, in the very cusp of the frontier, when I was, first moved there, people would use gold for bartering in the gold mines.
Right.
So aircraft services, food, everything was paid in gold dust. So that system is alive and well in the Amazon, where there's gold miners and stuff. So I assume that will, well, Brazilians will figure it out, because they've been under the boot heel of the tyrants for so long that they're pretty adept at getting around it.
Well, do you see some parallels? I mean, it's great that you've got, that you're between the two countries. Do you see some parallels between what's happened in Brazil and what's happening in the U.S.?
Yes, it's so after the Real Plan in '94 came in Brazil, then the bubble was created, and the credit was thrown out there to people that shouldn't have been getting credit, that were the very poor, lower class, that were illiterate, car loans to get washing machines and all that. So then, then they pulled back the credit, and they had all this chattel slavery, basically.
That's what always happens. And they keep talking about these digital currencies so that the financial system can be more inclusive. What do you think they're really planning on?
Yeah. Inclusive, those are the buzzwords. Resilient.
Yes.
It's the Marxist battering ram to take control of the source of industry and pass it on to the power structure. So,
and I remember when I first became a stockbroker back in the 80s, there was all this talk of globalization. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not sure that's such a great idea.
Yeah. Well, looking back, is hindsight's 2020, and I think that's where it's, we see our own friends and family that were participants in the system, foreign investors, or, setting up oil fields overseas or in Argentina, or venture capitalists going to Russia, to Brazil, and buying up state assets and sell companies. And now they did all the dirty work for the big guys, and the consolidation process is just about completed. And we're all going to be out of the job here shortly. And so that's self-apparent now. The question is what to do.
That is a really big question. And my hope is that people see this and wake up so that they can do something. What do you suggest people do? What are you doing for yourself? That's a much better question to ask. People always say, well, what would you do if you were me? That's not a very good question, because I can say anything. It is, what are you, John, doing for yourself and your family?
Well, when COVID first struck, I immediately called all our managers in Brazil. So we still run ranches down there. And I said, plant 3 times the garden, start inventorying everything that we got, all the cash we have on hand. We're going to risk it, and we're going to buy assets. We're going to buy 2-year supply of diesel. We're going to buy 2-year supply of fertilizer, seed. We're going to start inventorying rice in containers, beans, dry goods, salt, lots of salt, because then we can salt our beef. And we lived off the grid for a long time.
Yes, you did. So, and I'd love it if you would talk about that, because I have my mantra, and certainly haven't done it at the level that you have, but and maybe I need to even do more than I've been doing. But if you would share what that experience is like, because I think people really need to be prepared to actually kind of thrive through that, to be honest with you.
Well, so I would first of all say that don't be intimidated. It's actually fun, and I relish those times. I wish I could go back, and I think my wish is about to come true. So in the U.S., in Texas, so I think that first of all, you want to be in the community. You don't want to be isolated by yourself. And we were pretty dadgum isolated at the time. If you look at a map of the world, and the least dense population, or lowest population density in the world, was that part of the Amazon basin where we were. So we had neighbors that were no owners lived on the properties. They were all absentee, and they had really just had a staff of employees and gunmen to take care of the gunmen. So because it's so dangerous. Mm-hmm. So actually my wife and I moved to it, and as owners, I'm literally the only people I know for a long way that lived there. So that then, the most important things are, of course, water, food, communications, and safety. And safety, a gun comes in very handy. If you don't even have to use it, the fact that you got them, that you display them, you'll deter 90% of problems for sure. Because evil seeks out the weak points.
Right.
So as far as preparation, there we dug our own spring out. You learn to be ingenious, and you learn that you don't have to have the exact part and go to Home Depot or Ace Hardware or any other Vanguard company. You can actually make your own from baling wire and a little bit of common sense and some rubber. So we built out our own spring, piped it by gravity down to a water wheel that we built using a differential from a truck, and then pumped water uphill about a mile, laid the pipeline, and then used gravity then to feed it out to 7 houses. And we maintained it, maybe one time between 20 to 50 people that we were self-sustained on this property. So we would have our own garden. We had dozens of vegetables and fruits, and slaughter our own beef once a month. We'd kill our own beef and butcher it. And on herbs, medicinal plants. It was really a lot of fun because you brought in the community together. Everyone had an expertise. Someone was better at medicinal plants, usually the older ladies. The gardener was also the butcher. The cowboys would help clean out the water tank once a month to get sludge out, whatever. So we didn't treat the water. It was just spring water. All of our food was natural by nature, meaning not by ideology. It had to be. The biggest problem was parts. And so if you have something that breaks and you need to get a part from 1,000 miles away, and you have to shortwave radio to try to communicate, and it could take a month or two to get that part. So then you had to do your homework to have an inventory of parts that you need. And we're in that situation today, obviously.
Right.
You better get your filters, and you better have a friend who's a mechanic and help you, to get by in a crunch and jerry rig things when they break.
Yeah, I'm kind of lucky in that regard because my son-in-law is so handy.
Yeah, well, that's imperative.
It is.
Yeah, we had a truck driver that became my best friend down there, and his nickname was MacGyver, and his name is Granville. I mean, he saved us more than once, and ultimately that community became our family. The people I talk to weekly to this day, even though they don't work for me anymore. So it was. I guess the biggest part of it is you developed a sense of interdependence and love, and the love between families, and that's what we need today. And you kind of have to go back to the dirt, back to the soil to get dirty again, to kind of dig for that love again. Because in the city, you're isolated in a concrete jungle.
It's a lot harder, and it's really, the challenge for most people is what I've been asking people to do, what you're asking people to do, is have a paradigm shift. And, they cannot believe that what you just described could possibly happen here, even in the face of it actually happening. What would you say to them?
Happened, I'd say that just like they have countries around the world where they test, they have states in the U.S. where they test. They do a lot of testing in California. They tested our grid last year in Texas. A year ago to this week actually was the big freeze. If we'd been on natural gas and our normal energy supply, we wouldn't have had a problem. So I do think that if people don't know what's going on, they can't use ignorance as an excuse anymore, because ultimately at some point, non-action becomes compliance, and then you become guilty. And then you're a part of the problem. And then I don't want to see you, and get away from me. I've been warning you for years. I've been warning family and friends. They told me I was crazy, and today they're the ones who have humility are going, "What do we do?" And there are a lot of them. And the other ones that don't, I've weaned them. You've been warned, and you can only take care of so many people. And to think that the powers that be that have launched this thing are just going to go away. No, this has been going on for hundreds of years, and they are 3 or 4 chess moves ahead of us. They know what our reactions are going to be, and they control that opposition to the point that we are just simply pawns on the chessboard, and they are going to knock us to our knees.
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
Well, I was going to say a lot of what I see happening is divide and conquer, right? Because
Yeah.
if we're pointing the finger, well, it's your fault or it's your fault, they're not pointing the finger at the entities that are really, whose fault this really is.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and that's where a lot of the frustration comes, because of the people that they use to divide and conquer are the people they're going to wipe out first. My main, and I'm, had my military background, had friends that made careers out of the military, in all branches or all aspects of the infantry, airborne, and special forces and Rangers, and they all to a degree said, we can't fight this. This isn't a fight. What we have to do is create community to protect people, and to be able to survive the storm, because the storm's coming. It's spiritual, it's biblical, and it's a fool's errand to think that we're going to go out there and have a revolution. No, we need to prepare communities, and what you say is, and have a breakaway society where we create a new system, a bartering system, and get out of their stuff. I don't want to. I've divested from anything I had in the market.
Yep.
I do my best not to shop at their stores.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. So that's what we have to do. If we don't do it, then we'll be on our little islands. They'll just pick us off. But if we can create communities of people who are doing that, then they're going to have a rough time of it. And then so I think that's the best plan, and that's what I see in the United States. We because I've gone back and forth. Should we be in Brazil to go through the storm, or here? And Brazil's been too beaten and too trained as a colony. And we still have a spark of independence and that freedom-loving desire in the States that you're going to have, and you're going to have to harness that to survive what's coming. So that's just my own opinion. And of course, I hope I'm wrong.
You just gave me goosebumps, because unfortunately, I know what you're saying is true. Do you have any opinion what's been happening up in Canada with the truckers and cutting them out of the banking system, just freezing their accounts and all sorts of other things?
Yes, and I mean, who knows the truth? I have an opinion that whenever you get groups of people together, under whatever auspices that you do, you're going to have the elite trying to steer that and stick people inside that movement to try to either erode its credibility or steer it in a different direction. At the same time, I think what they did was heroic. I think that that defiance is, you can't take it away from people that see on television, and it's contagious, and that courage is contagious. And so do I think it's going to stop anything? No, but it gives me great. I would prefer to die standing than on my knees, and that's kind of the attitude that I think we should take here. We should say, no. If you're going to try to kill us, then we're just going to stop the whole thing now, and we two can tango at this game.
Okay, so if there's no chance, and I mean, we can't. The current system is so corrupt and disgusting that it really I think it has to burn itself out. But do you think there's a chance when we go into the new system, if enough of us can come together, that we can get some kind of real fair money back and a more fair system?
We are the receivers of the aggression, because we're not aggressive people. We're hardworking people, a society, a global society, and hardworking people don't have time to go think about hurting other people.
Right.
And it's just that total power and that total corruption of people's psyche. What's going to happen is they're going to unleash on this, and they're going to have they're going to get their casualties, but then the people that survive, you'll never be able to control them. And I think we're going to rebuild something better than it was before. And I think we're going to be able to rebuild something stronger and better. And I told my daughters that, and I said, your job is to learn, get smart, do the right thing, and keep your powder dry. And wait for 15, 20 years, and you will be new leaders of this country. And we will have cleaned house, and we will have them swinging from trees and in jails all over the world, the bad guys.
Boy, I sure hope you're right. I mean, I really do. That is my fondest wish.
Yeah, I don't. That pendulum always does that. It's world history. This time, unfortunately, is I think we're in that last big hurrah where it's global, and they have
Oh yeah.
They control all the levers. They control energy. They control the energy, food, and the money. And they're going for broke. And they control the militaries. If you read Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley, or books by Anthony Sutton that went deep into the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, go back to Council of Foreign Relations, the World Institute of International Affairs, where I've spoken to all the CEOs of the banks of Europe. And you get a sense of massive evil, of greed and control and that's, and bankers make money on both sides of the war. So why wouldn't they? So I think that's what's happening.
Well, and also with Russia and the Ukraine and NATO, do you have any opinions on what's happening with that?
Well, my opinion on that comes from research and reading. There's an author called William Ingdahl. He was from Texas, lives in Germany now. He's one of the most brilliant geopolitical analysts. Went to Princeton. He's written books about Monsanto, the seeds of destruction, gods of money, but he talks about Ukraine. And in Eastern Europe, it's all theater. They're all working together at the top.
That's what I'm thinking. Honestly, that's exactly what I don't think that it's so much them or us. I think they're all working together toward the same agenda.
It's all towards the same agenda. And so, I mean, and my friends say, well, that's just impossible. So, okay, well, how did communism start? And they don't even know. So, it's a fun time to be alive, Lynette. I'm grateful that was born at this time. I think that's why we would not be born here if God didn't want us to be born for these times, and we will have the necessary strength and acumen to get through it. I don't have any doubt, and that's what they fear, and they fear nonviolence and smart people working together, and that's what gives me great glee and happiness is to just shame them. By doing the right thing. And I know that they know, it's obvious what's going on, and people at the very high level know, and people in our government know.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people know.
I don't know if you saw this, but I just did a piece on Ray Dalio's, the way the whole system, and we're at stage 5, and the last stage is stage 6. But as I was doing some research for that piece, and I hadn't come across this before, but the CIA, or it's somebody that works with the CIA, they know that we are no longer considered a democracy. We are an anocracy, which is a loose combination of democracy and then dictatorship. That admittance was actually really eye-opening for me.
Yeah. Well, most people don't believe it. But if you go back to the 50s, post-World War II, and you realize that the Council on Foreign Relations was planning our entrance into the war as of 1938. They were planning our entrance into the war as a piece on the chessboard at the right time. And then they were planning post-war after we had won. So how the hell do they know? Well, because they control the money.
Exactly.
And the logistics. So, we think we're in control, but we're really not. And then after the war, they set up the CIA with the help of MI6, British MI6, and of course put, what's his name? Alan Dulles is the head of the CIA, who was the Rockefeller's lawyer. and then put his brother John Foster as the Secretary of State. So there you go. And then they said, all right, get after the East India Company and go conquer the Southern Hemisphere under the guise of saving the world for democracy. And we're going to take all their crap. And we're going to lock it up in parks and Indian reserves and everything else. So we're going to use the American model that we perfected since 1900 to do this. And so that's what they did. And I've saw it in Brazil, and I've studied it in research, and that, read a book called Thy Will Be Done, The Conquest of the Amazon, Nelson Rockefeller and Age of Oil. And the author spent 18 years researching it. And it's a brilliant masterpiece. And when I read it, I would cry and have tears because I knew the people in it. And I said, damn, that guy was in the CIA, and that guy was doing this, and they bribed this politician or overthrew that president. And then they mapped the Amazon for its mineral resources. And then World Wildlife Fund came in and put parks on top of them. And they create scarcity by doing that, keep it out of the market, and then they control it. When they want it, they just buy off the government and get it and privatize it. So that's what I think is going to happen is the Southern Hemisphere, roughly, who knows the number for sure, but it's minimum 15 up to 25% of the Southern Hemisphere's landmass has been put into some sort of conservation easement under the guise of save the world, sustainable development, climate change, all that mess. And those assets are collateral for all the World Bank IMF loans. So when this collapse happens and they can't repay, well, guess what the big guys get? So, and the plan was launched in Brazil through the Rockefellers, and they brought at the time, the organization that was in charge of the Indians of the Amazon, they brought them to the U.S. to train with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to take back to Brazil to create this system.
I'll tell you what, you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't make it up.
So what would you suggest that people do to, what do they need to do right now? Because nobody knows exactly the timing of this. Well, maybe somebody does, but I don't know exactly the timing of this, but it feels awful close to me.
Well, yeah, I've spent years reading hundreds of thousands of pages of books and documents and declassified documents and interviews and what have you. And, who am I to make a decision? I still feel inadequate, but it sure feels like the 1930s, just like the war drums were beating in the 30s. Yeah. The war drums are beating now.
Yeah.
The Great Depression, which lasted for up until the war started, we're about to get into that period of the Great Depression, perhaps worse. And I don't think we're going to have to wait for 10 years to go to war. I think that they're immediately going to pull the trigger, but that's all in the next 5 years. So I would say, I would bet everything I had. So based on that and listening to you and your comments in the past, I agree. Why do you want to play musical chairs? I mean, you know this is happening. You can see this stuff happening. This is the last hurrah. Get out of the system totally. Transfer your fiat money into something tangible, silver and gold. Have a strategy on that, and buy food, buy the stuff that you need to survive now, and get out of this system that we have grown up in of materialism, where we think we have to have all this stuff, and go back to the basics now and get trained, and also get on your knees, and you better get right with God and get your family in order, or you're not going to be able to ride this bronc that's about to come, get us. So that's what my friends and family and my network of people, it's amazing. And we communicate almost daily now, all across the state of Texas and in Brazil too. We're catching on what's going on and getting prepared for this. So,
well, it feels very close. I'd say your timeline is probably about right. We've got some things coming up next year. I feel like 2022 is really a pivotal year because of what's coming ahead in 2023 with, it's all big experiments. It's all big experiments.
Yeah. And that's where I get to go to these meetings, which are totally useless. They're already pre-planned, these global meetings about saving the world from fossil fuels. And they all go there using fossil fuels. And then you go to these meetings with all the bankers that they're going to save the Indians in India by giving them money and finance. Well, they're indebting them, and they're going to take all their lands.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Going to these meetings and listening to them talking about trade, talking about crackdowns on beef, eliminate animal agriculture by 2030, no more beef because of methane taxes, carbon taxes. They're going to put the boot heel in U.S. agriculture and grind it to the ground and put it to a stop. And then they're going to turn up the faucet on Brazil, which is going to be able to outproduce U.S. to supply China with what they want. And then once they pound us to the ground, they're going to turn off Brazil and they're going to starve us into oblivion.
There are more of us than there are of them, but they have really already, through the food sources and through what people are looking at, I mean, they have really already dumbed down the population on so many levels.
They have, and they've infiltrated every level of society, from academia to the county level to the military to the service academies. They have got the machine in their hands, and they know who's going to be a yes man and a yes woman, and that's who's in power. People who revolted against it, that have dignity and integrity, they got out. When you watch this, you realize that we've been playing checkers and they've been playing chess, and we're catching on to this at the very end of the game, and we have time to prepare for the storm, which most people don't have time to prepare for storms, the hurricanes. Yeah, and so we can follow your instructions to the T, everything that you say.
You mean the food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter?
Yes, all the above, and I would even say the community is probably number one.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Because what you can't get on your own, you can't afford, you can get from a friend or someone in your network, and then how are they going to go conquer our country with thousands of communities like that? They won't be able to, so they won't be able to, and that's where I have hope is if you understand guerrilla warfare and insurgencies. That's what they're going to push society to this decade, and they will end up being destroyed. It will not come immediately, but it will take 10 years. We're going to have to ride this wave and have to have a lot of faith and take care of people and fight this fight, not with anger and rage, which I don't do a good job of, but with love, through love, loving your neighbor, loving the land, loving your animals, and even to some extent loving them and hoping that they will wake up. And some people will.
Some people will. I mean, more and more people are starting to wake up. And I'm curious because as I've been watching China and the way they control their population, I said they're really doing that experiment and showing the world how to control their population. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
I think it's not just that they're doing it, that they were trained to do it. And the whole World War II deal with, Patton wanting to go ahead and get the communists. And then he mysteriously died in a car accident after 4 years of brutal combat. They shut up that rhetoric immediately, and then they handed over China and Asia to the Russians, who didn't fight in China or Japan in the Pacific. We did. And then we handed it over to them on purpose to allow Stalin to spread communism. And then we trained Mao at Yale, skull and bones. Go to Yale, train you there, then we're going to send you over. It is no doubt they perfected that technocratic system there that Patrick Wood, I'm not sure if you know Patrick.
I certainly know Pat. I've met him personally, yes.
Yeah, he's just a phenomenal man. He's nailed it from the beginning, and that's what's happening. I don't think that they can maintain control, but that's what they're going to try to do through the 5G towers and cell phones and everything else. And so that's why I want to get off of all that mess, get rid of my iPhone, and start to wean ourselves from the system. But it's hard to do that until the bullets start flying,
right?
Because you kind of still need it. So
that's the thing, and the whole monetary system. As much as everybody can now see what's happening with dollars, but that's still our legal tender, so we still have to use them. I haven't owned any stocks or bonds in a long time, but my personal feeling is, with everything that's going on, is that gold and silver are truly decentralized and outside of the system and run no counterparty risk.
Yeah, there is no way that the power that they've got They control everything on this planet. The second you do something that's good, that's growing, they come after you. And they either offer you money to get a part of your company, or they wait for you to grow and then they cut your credit. There's 1,000 ways that they do it, and I saw it happen in Brazil over and over again. Going back to gold and silver, frankly, I don't know how else you do it. Or bullets that you can sell, liquor, small liquor bottles, but really that only so much liquor you can inventory. So that's about you've really nailed it the whole time. Everything that you've been saying. I just validate what you say from Brazil. That's happening here, and I feel like a canary in a coal mine.
Right.
And yeah, just want to scream and kind of water hose everybody, and that ends up causing more damage than good. So I tend to be quiet these days.
Well, you can't, and you talk about that, and also self-censorship. I mean, I think it's interesting because people will say that I'm brave, and I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but the truth is there are things that I would like to say that I cannot say. I'm self-censoring, and a lot of people are self-censoring because now there's only one. This is the part that drives me crazy, really. It bothers me probably the most, is that there's only one opinion that matters, and it's not yours or mine.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, when you get people that are really, they're self-censoring, I mean, this is supposed to be freedom of speech. This is supposed to be America. And yet, I can't say everything that I want to say. I've got to stay in my lane so that I can continue to be of service. But I have other opinions too, frankly.
Well, so do I. And that's where the more that you dig into this research, trying to, searching for the truth.
Right.
And you'll strike gold nuggets every now and then, like, oh gosh, I mean, they know how we're going to react because they've been working with the top universities in psychology and psychiatry for 120 years. And they already have figured out in modeling how we're going to react. And they can do surveys, all these surveys and all the things we sign up to on petitions. And then they know, yeah, society now is ready to be taken over. No longer do they have that fighting spirit. No longer do they stand up for what they believe. Everyone's politically correct, and they're scared because they're just become a bunch of spoiled rats. And they're used to doing what they want. And I think that's what's happened. And I think that's the peril that we're in. I don't think there's any way out of it except for stress and hardship and chaos. And then we rebuild.
And so that takes us, really kind of full circle to being independent and self-sufficient inside of a community of like-minded people.
That's the only option that we really have. I mean, we don't have any other option.
Right.
I mean, they're gonna try to take away our goats and our cows, and they're gonna talk about animal agriculture. They're gonna come with 1,000 reasons to take away our food. But nevertheless, that's what we have to do. And then we'll have the moral authority to protect what's ours. And you have a community. We're setting up local markets here where I live. Doctors are leading that charge.
Really?
People all over for beef, for pork, for vegetables, even service providers. And it's just started in the last 6 months, and but people are catching on, and that's why they're catching on that the bosses are going to have to do something soon, to stay ahead of the power curve. The big guys, so because they know that we're talking, and they know that we're getting organized, and they do have that arrogance that they control everything. Well, up to a point. If our military would not react, and if our police force would stand by the people, well, we wouldn't have a problem, would we?
Right.
Any problem. So eventually we're going to know who the people are, the traitors, and they'll pay a heavy price at some point, because society, when you start taking food away from your family and kids, that's just history. So it's certainly a Noah's Ark type of situation. And those who are building Noah's Ark by following what you say, they will, I think we're going to survive the storm, and I think there'll be a long period of peace. So that's it.
I have absolute hope that last part that you just said is absolutely true, because I would like to think that we're leaving a better world for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. the world that it seems like they have in mind for us, the powers that be, is not really one that I want to share. That's one of my security pieces. One of them. That's my
Yeah.
old girl, though.
I had a Brazilian dog, like a Mastiff, half cross Mastiff. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I think
she's
that's
an
where
English Mastiff.
that's well, I don't. I think we're in a time that, you got to be careful what you say too, especially being from Texas and bragging and all that and talking as a kid. And, well, I wish I were in the old West. I wish I was a Texas Ranger. I wish I had done this. And, well, here you go.
Here you
It's
go.
right before you. It's time to ante up and cowboy up, and not cower and put your tail between the legs. And also, like I said at the beginning, the fact that they're pushing us back into a state of survival mode,
Yeah.
is actually a blessing in disguise to get weaned off of all this mess that spend all the time on iPhones and Netflix and all this contaminating, venom, and get back to being people and humans and enjoying, and not living to eat, but eating to live. And that's really what we're getting pushed into, thanks to them. And I'm not going to eat their crickets or their lab-grown meat either.
No, I agree with you. I think we need to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible. In my off-grid place, the only thing I don't have up there yet is the food, but that we're starting construction on May 1st. So the fabrication is already taking place, and then I'll feel comfortable. And I'm planning on enough for 35 people. That's my plan. So, because it takes a village. It takes a lot of different people with a lot of different skills to come together and survive this mess that we are in because of all of the abuse that we've endured without even realizing it. It's like, how do you get people to volunteer? Well, you do it really slowly until you have all the barn doors closed.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's like this is easy for me to see as a cattleman, because you have to strategize how you're going to get wild cattle from various pastures into one small corral, and you got smart cows and lead cows, and so there's a whole art and science to how you deal with livestock, and so they treat us like livestock, and they're using the exact same terminology and modus operandi to put us into the digital corral, and so that. They will not get us all, and the people that get away will end up coming back and opening the gates for the other people. That's what's going to happen. So, in looking in Brazil, when I moved with my wife to the Amazon, there were small riverine communities along rivers that had been landlocked, that they'd gotten there back in the 60s and 70s. No electricity, no telephone, no cars, no motorcycles, no. Everything was natural thatch roof, adobe huts. They lived off the land. It was truly just a blessing to be able to experience people when they're pure. And they're the happiest people you'll ever meet, healthy. And, to some extent, we're being pushed back into happiness, really, and leaving the rat race. This rat race that these people have created, where you have to work 6 days a week, and, and then if your kid wants to go to college, you got to play soccer 24 hours a day, and then you got to get a scholarship. And then by the time you're dead, you realize, damn, all I did was work.
Right.
So this reset that's their marketing, branding. But ultimately, they're going to get reset.
Exactly. Yeah. What's going to actually get reset? I mean, we know the financial system, and they're telling us too, social, economic, as well as financial reset. But maybe we have a choice, and maybe I have hope that on the other side of this mess, that we can all come together and definitely have a system that supports the people, and not just the few at the top, but the many.
Yeah. Well, I'm convinced of that, Lynette. I mean, I guess I've come to the realization that we have to run the gauntlet now. We're not going to stop it.
Right.
But on the other side of it, we will be really in a phenomenal spot that humans have never had in the history of humans. That we'll be able to have the lessons of massive evil and rebuild society that's fair, that treats people with respect, and so that's coming, and I think we'll be alive to see that.
Oh, I think we will.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about it, and I don't, it's a good time to test your own principles and values and virtues, and the revenge and anger. No, it will. The people that did wrong will pay a price. They'll be judged, and there'll be trials and what have you, and then we'll have to be vigilant for another 1,000 years before it comes back. But this is the like Fred Sanford and Sanford and Son. This is the big one. It's coming.
I think you're right. Wow, I haven't thought about Sanford and Son in a long time. Yeah. It definitely ages us.
It sure does. Yeah.
We've covered so much, and there's so much more. But is there anything that you want to leave with our viewers? Any words of wisdom for them that we haven't talked about?
Believe in people. Believe in the human spirit, because the human spirit at its core is a fabulous thing, and it only comes out in times of crisis. And so we're going to see millions of examples of people that are just going to say, I've had enough of this crap.
Yes.
And it's a time of martyrs. So I think it's not scary to me. It's really a godsend to be alive at such a time, to see something so historical, and then be able to have your grandkids say, man, look what happened back then. This is going to be the big one for sure. So I guess my only message is the way to fight it, which I have to tell myself daily, and is through love. It's through love. And love is the way to fight it. And love ultimately leads you to do the right thing and treat people and animals and the land with respect. And that's really the recipe that these don't want us to do. So the more that we do it, the more to make them mad, and the cream rises to the top, and you can't keep the truth down, and eventually they're going to lose. And but if you don't realize that, then you're in a state of terror and fear.
Right.
And don't be afraid. That's the last stanza of the Ranger Creed, which is the 6 stanzas in the Ranger Creed in the Army, is readily without display their intestinal fortitude to fight on and arrange your objective and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. Rangers lead the way, hooah. And that's my creed. You're not going to beat me, and I will not cower, and I will do the right thing, and you're going to have to kill me to stop me. And if we all have that attitude, well, they'll never win.
I love that. That is absolutely perfect. I agree with it 100%, and we'll just keep coming together in community like we are, and we will beat them.
Yeah, we're going to beat them. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. But you've got to brace. You got to brace for the storm.
Yeah.
And when you brace, you got to have concrete pillars. And you got to have your food and your security and your community and your water and your gold and all those things you talk about are your pillars that you can rest upon to brace for the storm. And then it won't affect your house. It'll blow right over.
Exactly. And then we live to fight another day. We live to recreate a society and a system that is definitely for the good of all.
That's it. And that's what's going to happen. And you do an unbelievable job spreading that word. And, God bless you. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that you were here today with us, because, this has been really eye-opening, and I'm not surprised, because I did my homework, and I was just excited to see you anyway, and you've just brought so much value to the table, and I really want to thank you, and I want you to know how much everybody out there that's watching appreciates it.
Well, you're welcome. I guess the last thing I was just thinking is, I've met these people and shaking their hands, a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that have lily white hands, that don't know how to work, and they're living off the sweat of the hardworking people of this world and of America. And they will be taken down. And that is what motivates me to do the right thing, is I want to see them on trial for what they've done. And it's all of them. It's the bankers, the people I've met in the UN conferences and all that. It has nothing to do with stopping an illness or saving society. It has to do with control.
Exactly.
And they're going to lose. So that's my message, is they're going to lose, and when you know them and you meet them in face to face, and go, well, they're not intimidating at all. They're actually kind of losers. So
yeah, then you realize it. Well, they've had everything handed to them. When you have to work and create everything yourself, you have a lot more fortitude.
Yeah, that's why they hide behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz.
Yep, exactly.
They don't want anyone to see them. And when that curtain's pulled back, well, they better run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming, John. Is there any way that anybody can get a hold of you?
There's a way to go through our website and get a hold of me. We just want to create a movement. We want to create a movement of doing good, and the more the merrier, and that's simple. So,
well, count me into that movement. Absolutely. Right. And with that, that's it for today. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.